Hey guys, how's it going? Just going to start this a little bit early. All right, you guys rolling in. Sweet. Yay. Lots of people today. Awesome. What's up, guys? Oh, man. How's your Friday going so far? Yeah. All right. So just to start off, I was just going to do just another Q&A session today. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and put it down in the Q&A section down here somewhere, if you can see it. And then there's a couple questions that came through an email that I'll answer as well. I'll do those first. So, and then I'll hit your Q&As down below. So let me let a few more people come in. And I just wanted to thank you guys for filling out the poll. It's going very interesting so far. I should show you guys what it's looking like. Here, let me pop it open here. Find out where it's going. Okay. I'll share my screen here in a second and show you guys. Oh, come on. Share screen. All right. So I don't know if you guys can see when you guys are doing the poll, can you guys see what others have put so far? It looks like the best time right now is hovering around 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. my time. So this is my time. So yeah, we have a lot of people filling out this poll. 121 so far. Fantastic. Love the results. So it looks like I'll probably do 1 p.m. works best for me because it's right after my lunch. So I don't have to like disrupt my family to do it. So we'll see. I'm going to let this poll continue, but right now we're hovering around this area right here. So interesting, right? There's my calendar. I'm going to New York, to the New York City Toy Fair in February. So I'm going from February 15th until the 20th. And I'm also going up to Connecticut to go to Lego to do a workshop. So one of the students in here, Peter Donner, he works at Lego, and he's invited me to go up there and do a workshop for them, which is awesome. Okay. Let's read. You should have gotten an email to that poll asking you to fill it out. So check your email for it. Oh, you guys are yeah, okay. Let me catch up. Oh my goodness, chat's going crazy. Okay. Sideways at the moment. Good morning, good morning. Let's see, hi all, hello. Yeah, check your email for the poll. Doing the teeth for Inky. Okay, did you watch that video back? Okay, awesome. Yep, cool. Okay, so let's get started with the questions from the email. So Corinne had a question about hair. And let me share my screen. I've actually, Corinne, I pulled up your, I pulled up the FBX that you sent me, and I'm actually inside Blender right now. Crazy, I know, it's weird. But I just wanted to pull it up in Blender and take a look at it. So it looks like you have, I think I can hide this. So it looks like you have two meshes. You have the main mesh, and then you have the floating mesh, which is these extra fine hairs right here. Let me go to your email so I can show people what you're talking about here. Okay. Oh gosh. Come on. Of course, when I want to show you guys, it's not working. So this is Corinne's fantastic model. You've done a super good job of it so far. It's a little bit on the shiny side, so be careful about that because it looks like plastic. So I would look into and I can never pronounce it correctly. It's like anisotrophic or anatrophic shader. That's what they use in Overwatch. I don't even know how to say it. I just brutalize it. Anyway, that's what they use to get the hair shaders looking nice. But to answer your questions, and I looked at your maps here, so you have all these little hair strands, one for each different lengths. And basically what people usually do, let me see if I can look up some images and show you what a typical hair card texture will look like. Okay, so like with this guy, usually hair textures will look like this. So you have alpha in the back that's knocking it out to make it transparent, and then you have kind of more fine fibers here. That's one option. There's also an option to do it even lighter, like this one. Yeah, here's another example. So typically the hairs will show more, like a few more than just one. That's all I wanted to point out there. And you can try that to make it more wispy. Some of the best hair that I've seen in video games are Geralt from The Witcher and Horizon Zero Dawn. So those two are some really good ones to check out. And I know you're doing stylized hair. Also the Uncharted series, fantastic. You can see what all the hair cards look like there. So the reason why I wanted to show you these hair cards is because you can see that it's not all one connected piece that goes all over the head. It's more about having a whole bunch of separate cards that are just kind of laying over the top. That's why they call them cards, because they're kind of small, like a card. And Mike Black has been doing hair cards for his current project. You might want to look at that. But you were asking about what you should do with the top. So it looks like most of these are connected on the top. What I would do is I would probably disconnect and just make one, just one strand at a time, rather than trying to figure out how to connect them all at the top. But the way you've done it is not wrong by any means. I wouldn't not do it that way. Is that something I could say? There's nothing wrong with this way either. I would just probably cut it up a little bit. Okay, no verts are welded. They're actually separate. You just combine them. Okay, so yeah, so I would take like, let's see, like just maybe this row of faces, just right, this strand, and just clip it off and just have one strand and bury the end of that strand into the head, rather than let it carry on all the way back here and bury it back here. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so they're not connected back here. I think, yeah, it looks like Blender makes it look like they're connected, but it's not. So they're all separate pieces. But what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't take them that far back. You can make them shorter. The thickness of them is fine, but I was thinking fewer of them, like less of them, and then you can do maybe more wispy strands. And the geometry is it's not something that you should worry about. You're just trying to break up the silhouette. That's like the goal of these wispy hairs, is just to make it not look like a hair helmet. So it's more like, so it just kind of breaks up the silhouette, so it's not just like solid piece of hair, if that makes sense. You just can't figure out how to get it to lay nicely on top of the rest of the hair. So if they're shorter, then you have less to deal with. You're not trying to do that. All you need is to start from where it connects with the head and starts to break off of the hair. That's the only bit you need. You don't need to go from there into the head or try to make it lay on the surface, because you'll start to get Z-fighting, is what it's called, where there are two faces that are too close to each other in the Z direction based on the camera. So you'll get some jitter in the game engine. So all you need is where it starts to come off of the hair and then down, away from it, if that makes sense. So You can even have part of the texture of the beginning of that hair in the hair helmet part of it, and then the rest of it continue down that strand. I've done that before too. One thing in your game engine that you want to be aware of is you sometimes where that line starts, where it comes off of the hair, it will make a hard edge line. So you'll want to turn off shadows on that specific piece of hair. You might have to make another material for it for all the different separate hairs, because you're going to be rendering it double-sided, and you can turn off receive shadows. Well, let's see. You want to turn off, I'm trying to remember, it's been a while. Either cast shadow or receive shadow or both. I'm trying to remember, but you might have to experiment with that. You can experiment with it in Marmoset or like Unity or Unreal, wherever you want to push it to. And just if it's making a hard line, just kind of beware of that. And that's especially, you don't want to have ambient occlusion on there. That's kind of the thing that makes it have shadows. So play The Division. Is there Z fighting The Division a lot? Okay. So does that answer your question, Corinne? I hope. Is that clear at all? So basically what I would do is I would make the hair just short. So maybe it would go up to about right here. Maybe this one or maybe this one, and have it start here and then hang off the hair right there. And then delete everything back, going back to the part in the back of the hair, if that makes sense. So just have the little pieces where it's breaking off of the head, and then delete the rest. Okay, good luck. She's turning out awesome, by the way. She looks fantastic, super, super nice. Okay, this other question, I'm not gonna lie, it's a difficult one to answer. Let me see. It's from Eric. Eric asked me, he said he has a commission to do miniatures for a board game. And I'm going to show you guys the email here. And he says, unfortunately for me, two of them, part of the body have clouds or sand, or a sand cloud, and the other ones have hair or water. I don't have any idea how I can get these forms in 3D printing. Thanks for the help. Okay, this is crazy that they're asking you to do this and just expecting you to kind of pull it off. So this is probably the most difficult thing to pull off in 3D sculpting. I'm not going to lie. So it's pretty crazy. Eric, I don't know if you're here. Oh, thanks, Tomas. So I don't know if you're here or not, but we had to do smoke on a few of the characters for Disney Infinity, and it was an exercise in insanity. It's very, very difficult to get smoke to look good. Let me show you an example, but it is possible. I'll tell you, it is possible. Let me see, Disney Infinity. So there's one, we were gonna do these, the collector's edition of Buzz Lightyear, and Brad Bolender did this version with smoke coming out of the jetpack. And let me see if I can find a better image of it. I don't know how, let me see how big this image is. Yeah, XM Studios is fantastic. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, the reference for XM is great. Gosh dang it, it's not, these aren't big enough. But so this, it's hard to get it not to look like popcorn or bubbles or something like that, and to get it to actually look like smoke or sand. I found one from ArtStation. There was a guy that was doing a pretty good job with fire. So you kind of pull off these bits to make it look like fire. I have a miniature, I have a cleric, and he's casting some magic. I don't know if I can find him, but they did something interesting where they cast in two separate materials. So the character was actually a solid material, and the magic he was casting was in transparent. So I wonder if they would let you do a dual. There's sometimes you can find dual printers that will print in two different types of materials. It depends on the run, like how many characters are they going to do? If they're going to do mass manufacturing, then they have to cast it in two different materials and then key it and put those materials together. That's how the miniatures that I have were done. Let's see. Let me see if I can find one right off the bat. If I can show you what I'm talking about. I'm not seeing it. They're fairly new. But you can see how they do a lot of their special effects in miniatures. You can just try and find one that's very similar to what you're looking for. I think the hardest one you're going to find difficulty with, oh, here we go. This one's, so I think this is him, but somebody painted it. But these are actually printed in clear. The one I have of this guy, these are clear. But what I was going to say was this one right here with the cloud coming off the back of her hair, that's going to be, without it looking like bubbles or something, I don't know how that would look. It's just going to be a matter of experimentation and going back and forth with them, trying to find a good medium ground. There's, yeah, this one floating on some sand. This guy would be a little bit easier because you can kind of get some twisty blowing flow down in there. Let's see. Okay, let's see. I tried to render. So in Hero Forge, do they have some on there that are like some special effects stuff? Okay. Yeah, Hero Forge is great because they allow you to put together miniatures, and then you can just add stuff. But I didn't know that they had some special effects stuff. But XM Studios, that's a good one. Those guys over there, they do a lot of special effects in their sculpts, and that would be a good reference to go by. Let's see, this one has, no, there's, maybe Venom has some stuff coming off the back of him. I think I clicked on an ad, but that's not really smoke. Anyway, yeah, just try and find some 3D sculpted reference. I did find, sorry, give me a second. I have too many tabs. So you can just look for sculpted smoke. And this stuff came up. So there's something like this that you could do. I don't know where you'd even start other than just like, you know, with inflate or, you know, just trying to get this look from sculpting by hand. But there are a lot of kind of cool things you can find here. Yeah, see how this one just kind of looks like bubbles, but it's working. I think it feels like smoke. This one's pretty good, but this feels more like a root of a tree where it's actually twisting and it has form to it, which is kind of nice. Yeah, there's just some experimentation that will have to be done. I wish I had, this is what you need to do, this is the answer, but it would be a matter of just like finding something that matches what you're trying to go for, and then maybe sending some of these images to your client and saying, do you kind of want it to look like this or more like this? You know, maybe gather up some examples and send it to them and say, these are kind of the things I could possibly pull off, you know, and then just kind of go from there. So, but I wish you luck. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Make sure you double the price. Okay, let me catch up on chat here. Can you show us some rendering methods in Marmoset Tool Bag 3? I tried to render a high poly only model, but wasn't successful. In the video in the course, you show us how to do it with the high and low poly. I'm just trying to do the high poly. Yes, I can show you guys that stuff, but I'm not set up to do it right now. It would take me a moment and you guys would just be like tapping your fingers. So let me make a note of that and I'll make a specific video. Oh goodness. Okay. I'll make a specific video to show you guys. So render high res in Marmoset. I also want to do one render high res in Cycles. I'm trying to teach myself Blender right now, and I'm learning Cycles because I'm trying to get away from having you guys buy Keyshot and Marmoset and all that kind of stuff if it's not necessary. I know it's great if you've already purchased that stuff because they're worth every dime. But typically, I will render my high resolution characters inside of Keyshot because it just gives you such nice ambient occlusion and lighting and all that kind of stuff. But it's possible in Marmoset. The biggest thing you have to do in Marmoset is you have to change your material over to vertex lighting. So poly painting is vertex lighting. Okay, so you need to make sure your colors will show up by changing that setting in the material over to vertex lighting from the standard way that it does. Okay. So let's see. Hero Forge. Hero Forge. You could push the stylization of the clouds with swirling patterns for sure to make it not look like bubbles. Yep, that's a good tip. XM did a Gambit. Okay, check out Gambit. Gentle Giant Boba Fett animated. So Caitlin, that is actually, it's funny that you brought that up because that is the exact model that we used when we were looking at when I did the Incredible Hulk collector's edition, the big one that never happened. And when we did that Buzz Lightyear, we were both referencing that Boba Fett smoke because it is fantastic. Let me pull it up. It's very, very stylized. Let me see if I can find it really quick and I'll share my screen. Okay. It's just, there's not very much of it. So there's not very much smoke, but here you can see it. See this wispy. The reason it's so cool is because it has direction. You know, it's kind of going with the flow of the action of the entire pose. The pose is so strong, and the back of his cape is being ripped and torn and pulled, and then the smoke is showing the direction of the blowing of the wind, and it's curling up back here and looking really cool. I just don't know, based on the characters that you have to do for your freelance job, I don't know if you can, get any of this stuff in there. But be aware of it. Take a look at it. This is a really, probably some of the best smoke ever done in a sculpt, in my opinion. It's really well done in a stylized sculpt, I should say. So okay, let's see. Push the stylization of the clouds. Double the price. Does that answer your question? Does that help you at all, Eric? I hope so. Okay. I'd love any tips on speed sculpting. So I'm going to get to your questions and answers here in once. Oh, okay. You just asked it over there too. Okay, speed sculpting. So specifically, what are you looking to do in speed sculpting? Are you just looking to get faster, or are you looking to just so you can practice more, or what are you wanting to achieve with your speed sculpts is a better question, I think. Typically what I would do is you will just naturally get faster the more you sculpt and the more you do things. I would try and get a character head or a very simple character done in, say, a lunchtime, back when I was doing Lunch Crunch, when my friend Point Pusher was first starting to do them. And that was fun. That helped a lot, and it really increased my speed and my skills. But I was doing a different technique back then, where I would just mask off an area and then I would pull the geometry out. So I wasn't quite using the block out with primitives method that I use now, which in my opinion is actually faster. So if you watch my Pixologic live streams, you'll see that I can get ahead pretty close to being done in a couple of hours. So I think your speed will just increase based on your skill level in practicing. So it's like what does Proko say? Practice with intent, I guess. Like, don't just practice to practice. Actually, practice with the intent on getting better and doing. Don't just throw stuff out there just to throw stuff out there. Actually, try. It's better to have quality than quantity. So it's better to focus on getting the forms and stuff really well done, instead of just throwing stuff in place and trying to get it done as fast as you can. Because you do learn things from both. Like, the more you do it, the better you get. But there is something to be said as far as like really focusing on the quality, and because you'll be hired more for your quality than you will for your speed. I'm going to tell you that right now. So the speed is kind of impressive to your friends more than it is to a company, if that makes sense. I mean, yes, companies have deadlines, and yes, they want you to get it done in a certain amount of time, but more often than not, they'll want it to be done well more than they want it to be done quickly, if that makes sense. So it just depends on what your intent is. Like, why would you want to do a speed sculpt and get it done fast versus taking your time and doing it awesome? So, okay. Hope that helps. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Also, things to take note when I sculpt, what to sculpt, how long intervals. Okay, so yeah, okay. I'm gonna, if you don't have a question, don't put the question in the Q&A. Just do it in chat. There's two separate areas. So you might, just only post questions in the Q&A if you could, please. Let's see. Also, things to take note when I sculpt. Yeah, okay. So I would do it. I've been having a good time just sculpting 2 hours. 2 hours seems to be a nice round time. And even if you have a longer job, because if you have an 8-hour job, just do like 2-hour sessions. Get up, go get a snack, go get some water, go to the restroom, maybe take a little walk and then come back. 2-hour sessions seem to be a pretty good block of time that I can actually like sit and focus and do what I need to do. That's why I stream for 2 hours, because that's about, when I first started streaming, I was streaming for 3 hours, and that's much more difficult to stream for 3 hours than it does for 2. So 2 hours seems to be kind of the sweet spot for me personally. So you might want to, but as far as what to sculpt, now I have to point out, Lucky, I'm going to call you out. Lucky D, he blocked out just a ton of cartoon characters with the primitive method, and I don't know if Lucky's here. He might be. Lucky, what do you think? What's your post-mortem as far as like after doing that? Do you feel like your skill increased a lot, or a little, or a ton? Or I kind of want to ask you that question after doing that exercise, how you feel about your skill level as far as blocking out characters now. Because if you look at some of the characters that he started blocking out at the very beginning of the month, and I gave him some feedback on some about flow and silhouette and keeping things clean, versus at the very end of the month when he did his last few, he leveled up in his as far as his blockout abilities. So if it depends on kind of where you want to get better. If you want to get better at something, the best way to do it is to repeat it. If you think about like learning how to play a musical instrument or something like that, the best way to learn it is to practice, but practice with intent rather than just practicing to practice, if that makes sense. So, for example, instead of just doing a character start to finish over and over and over again, Lucky wanted to get better at doing blockouts before he moved on to the next step. So he did a ton of them, which is fantastic. So that's my advice right there. Is like find the area that you want to get better at, and then practice that area. So if you're learning how to play guitar, you want to get better at doing solos, you practice solos. If you're getting better at, doing chords, do chords, that kind of stuff. So, okay, let's see. Okay. Oh, Mike asked, do you have any tips or advice when using Quad Draw in Maya for topology? I found that it behaves very finicky with surfaces with thicknesses such as clothing. It seems to only work on a single-sided mesh. Mike, I didn't get the opportunity to use Quad Draw with a thin surface like that. It sucks that it's having issues. Did you try doing the topology and 3D coat? Does it not? It probably does the same thing, right? It probably like snaps through to the other side. The problem is you have two surfaces that are so close together. When you're trying to draw on the surface, it's trying to decide which surface to go to, which it should know because you have two sets of normals facing opposite directions, right? It should know which side you're trying to draw on based on your camera view, but honestly, sometimes it just doesn't. So you might try, yeah, I guess deleting the back side of it. You don't have to have your entire model in the scene. Excuse me, when it comes to retopologizing, you don't have to have your entire model in there. If you're just retopologizing a piece, say like your shirt or whatever. By the way, that I haven't commented yet, the shirt that you did, that is great. It's the retopology job on that is really, really good. The only thing I would suggest is maybe using the smooth brush or the relax just to kind of even out the quads a little bit. But having the triangles in the sides down the front, if you have large breaking silhouette areas, it's just fine to do that and do triangles and stuff like that. You don't have to have perfect quads everywhere. But you, like Sean was saying, you don't have to perfectly follow the form on every single wrinkle. It's best if you can have more. If it looks like a quilt. So the squares on a quilt. If you were to lay that around a model and you have perfect squares, that's the ultimate thing you're trying to hit because it deforms the best and it's even. And it works with your UVs the best, and it works with your UV map projection the best. So the best thing to hit are perfectly square quads. But as we all know, it's not always possible. In fact, it's hardly ever completely 100% possible. So you just get as close to that as possible. So when you're trying to retopologize over a bunch of detail like straps and just little wrinkles and all that kind of stuff, just try to keep it in quads, try to keep it square. But if there are large wrinkles that will break out of that perfectly square situation, then it's fine to add triangles. It's fine to follow the flow a little bit because you have to think about when that character is going to move and where the wrinkle exists. So if the body's going to twist and turn like this, you have to think about if it's going to twist and if it's going to stretch and break those triangles in those areas. So the worst places to have triangles typically is in the shoulders and the elbows and the wrists, anywhere there's a joint. But the shoulders and the hips are probably the worst places. That's why you want to set it up to be an accordion because that deforms the best and makes the best wrinkles. When you bend your arm like this, you'll get this nice seam right here if you have loops running around the joints instead of having triangles. Now there's something to be said about triangles in like finger knuckles. In days of old when you had like really, really, really low topology and you only had so many triangles to use in your entire character, sometimes it was okay to have triangles on your knuckles and stuff like that. You'd get a better joint bend. But with the poly count of today, that's not necessarily true anymore. It's better to have just equal quads all the way across your knuckles when they bend, stuff like that. Okay, so anyway, I hope that answers your question. I would go I would go in there and just try and, if it works better with single-sided, then go ahead and delete the backside if you can. I know it's a huge pain in the ass, but it's better to do it that way. Just because if you think about it, all you're doing is you're just giving yourself temporary geometry that you're going to draw on top of, just like when you use the topology brush inside of ZBrush. Sometimes you just give yourself some temporary geometry just because you want to draw on something, and that's all it is when you're doing retopology. You're just drawing on something. So not every time, or I won't bring the full character into 3D Coat or Maya every single time. I'll just bring whatever I need at the moment. I can retopologize something, then send it back to ZBrush, or send it to Bake Maps from it. You don't have to do the entire thing all at once. You can just do piece by piece. And if a situation comes up like your shirt where you need to delete the back side of it before you retopologize it, then do it. If you need to delete some items off of there that are getting in your way, like an arm even, if your arm is in the way of the armpit, maybe just take the part of the shirt over that you want to retopologize, and then retopologize that, and then maybe take the arm over later, retopologize that, and then sew them together later inside of Maya or something like that. So anyway, I hope that helps. I know it's a huge task. So let's see. Okay, Liam says, hey Shane, how do you apply some details on the hand and feet? You did show the hand on your course, but you never did the feet. So Liam, honestly, if you think about objects not as what they are, but you're just sculpting the thing. So if you don't think about, I know how to do hands but not feet. First of all, you get reference for everything. Just get feet reference. If you're modeling a foot, get foot reference. If you're modeling a foot of a bear, look at a bear reference. Or it's all a matter of you're just sculpting whatever it is you're sculpting in the manner that it is presented to you. What I mean by that is that's why reference is so important, especially the concept that you're going from, because not all feet are created equal. So when I'm modeling a foot, I'm not modeling a foot. I'm modeling the foot that I'm looking at in the concept. So, for example, when I did Zenyatta's shoe, I was just modeling his shoe and that shoe that I saw only. But at the same time, I went online and I gathered a whole bunch of resources of shoes that were very similar to the one that he had on, so I could kind of see how they were built, if that makes sense. So the more information that you can give yourself to help you forward, the better. And you'll also want to make sure that you get your arcs in place. And what I mean by arcs, I haven't talked about arcs too much because I haven't done the anatomy, the stylized anatomy stuff yet. But when I say arcs, what I'm talking about is, if you guys can see my hand here, the arc of the knuckles, they're not straight across from each other. They don't make a perfect line. They actually have an arc. And you can see the tips of my fingers. They also make an arc like this. It's a curve. It's not straight across. Okay, and then your toes do the exact same thing. Your toes make a nice arc, and your big toe is higher than your small toe, so it makes an arc that goes down to your small toe. It's not a perfect circle, but it's not straight. And I noticed that in the bear that you're doing, his toes are almost perfectly straight across. And that's just human tendency to make things perfect and make things straight. Like someone else was, well, there's been several students that have made hands where the hands are just straight. They have all these straight lines, and everything is perfect, like this big blocky thing. And it's just not like that. Let me see if I can pull up let me see here. That's my low resolution. I'm just going to open up this low female blockout that I'm working on just to kind of show you. Let me share my screen. These are great questions, by the way. Thank you, guys. Okay, let me pull up ZBrush right here. Okay, let me just show you these hands that I've been working on here. And it also helps to not have the fingers, here, let me just focus on this. Turn off the floor, turn off symmetry. We'll just focus on this one hand here. Okay, so this is super low resolution, so you can kind of see what's happening, okay? If you look at, and I know this isn't a foot, but this will kind of give you an idea of kind of, you know, what to look at when you're blocking out a foot as well. And I'm going to show you some stuff with the foot too. But you can see this is kind of, it's not really an arc because I only have 3 points, but it's not straight across, okay? So here, let me grab this select lasso so I can show you. So it's not straight like this. See how it's, I'm using the straight line, showing you it's not straight across. And then the fingers, they're curving like this. There's an arc to them. And there's an arc to the knuckles and an arc to the second knuckle. Okay, everything has an arc to it, and in animation, you animate in arcs as well. You never animate linearly if you can help it, okay? So from the side, it's kind of better to, I didn't talk about this in the course, and I'm kind of learning it myself. I learned this from Dylan Ekron, where he actually splays his fingers. He splays his fingers like this. So you can see the next finger behind and the next one behind that and the next one behind that. And the reason why is it just gives you, it's not the best for rigging, but it just kind of gives you a more natural state that your fingers are in, okay? And then one interesting thing to note about the thumb is actually hanging on the inside of the hand, and it's tilted to the side like this, and it kind of grows out of the center of your hand here, okay? I mean, this isn't the best representation of it, but it's just, you know, it kind of, it's over here and it's its own thing, and it only has 2 joints rather than 3, because the other joint is actually back here inside the hand itself. So anyway, I hope that helps, but let me show you something on Pinterest really quick. I have a Pinterest board that has just foot anatomy reference. And this is where I go when I do feet, is if you go to Shane Olson Art on Pinterest, go to my boards, I have feet reference. Oh, come on. My computer's being strange. Okay, so I have, if it loads and doesn't keep trying to reload, I have all this foot reference right here. Okay, and this one is my favorite because it blocks out all the simple primitive shapes. Like, you know, we have the ankle even represented as spheres, and then the plane of the foot, and it's interesting because it's pushed onto this one side right here, and it's straighter on this side. And then the inside of the foot, it's almost like this is a separate shelf, right? It's a separate piece. And then your toes kind of go down another level, and then they kick out. So that's the interesting thing about toes versus hands, okay? And I don't know, doing the bear that you're doing, if you're gonna have to go this detailed or if you're gonna have to cut it like this. But that's why I say, you know, check out reference. And you can see how simple a foot starts, and then it's kind of like focusing a camera. How much more detailed do you want to take it as you go down the line? But there's also things to note, like the peak, the crest of the foot is not perfectly down the center. It goes down the inside, and it has a plane like this. And then the ankles are offset like this. So anyway, there's a lot of little tips and tricks for feet like that. But the best thing to do is to find reference. That's the best thing. So I hope that helps. Okay. Jim, oh, totally awesome. Scott's here, yay. All right. Okay, let me do the next one. I don't know. Okay, 12. Sean asks, with remakes and HD re-releases, what character would be your dream character to make? Mostly your retro to current gen dream job. Ooh, man. So that's an interesting question. let's see. Who, I just barely got back from watching Wreck-It Ralph 2, and Wreck-It Ralph, the character, is like in version 2 is really, really, really well done. And I've been, after talking to Tyler Bulliard, going down to Disney Feature, and he is a look dev guy, meaning he takes care of all the hair and the textures and all of that stuff. And what I'm looking into now, more recently, is I'm looking into the look dev stuff and the next gen using Blender and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, and then looking at my friend Guz. If you ever seen Guz, his models are just extraordinary as far as like the textures and the lighting and the hair and all that stuff goes. And I really haven't dabbled in that realm because it's kind of outside of the realm of video games, unless you use hair cards or anything like that. But film is its own beast. It allows you to get into those high resolution textures and make it look like realistic cloth and fur and that kind of stuff. And there's kind of a new spark in me lately that wants to learn that stuff. So I've been learning that stuff. And when I went to Wreck-It Ralph, I was really paying attention to, like, there's these wispy little fibers coming off of his ripped sleeves, and his hands are just so gigantic, but they still follow the rules of proportion based on his character, and they work and they fit. But they're so big. It's interesting to see how far you can push a character. So probably I would have loved to have worked on Wreck-It Ralph himself. That would have been awesome. Also, I noticed that I was looking at that eye rule that I told you guys about, where the eye openings, the space between your eyes should be one eye opening apart, and they break that rule all over the place in Wreck-It Ralph. So there's pretty much every single character in there except for maybe the princesses, because they're more realistic. But their eyes were a little closer together than one eyeball apart, which was really interesting. So if you guys can go check out that movie, pay attention to that. I mean, start to look at proportions and see how far away their noses are and their mouths land, and their eyes, how far they are apart. And anyway, it was just a really cool design. That movie is just very, very well designed, and I would have loved to work on any of those characters. But I'm actually really excited about. I talked to you guys about making Sirloin and making him. The reason I modeled that character in the first place, back in what it was, 2002 or 2003 or something like that, is because I love that character. I really, really love him. So I would love to get him built, and I'm excited to work on him too. So I think that's the character I'm going to go for. I haven't heard back from Todd yet. He said he was going to show me some of his more recent work, but I'm still leaning towards doing that Sirloin character. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Julian says, I have a question not completely about character, but actually I'm trying to do a little scene with a submarine from Charlene de Sena. I can't say, I can't pronounce that. I'm trying to do the block out in Maya, but I wonder if even an object or a scene can be blocked out in ZBrush. It absolutely can. A tool is just a tool. Maya is just a tool. ZBrush is just a tool. Every time I approach something like that, it's just, I think to myself, what is the best tool that's going to help me get this done the quickest? Okay. And what that means sometimes is maybe I'm more proficient in Maya right now, or maybe I want to learn how to block something out in ZBrush, so I'm going to force myself to block it out in ZBrush if I have the time. So it kind of depends on if you're wanting to use it as a learning thing, or if you're wanting to use it as, a way to, if you just need to get it done, you just need to get the client happy, and you already know Maya, just do it in Maya, is, what I'm saying? Like, what's your timeline? What are your goals? Typically I'll just get it done in whatever I need to do it in. I don't try and force myself to use any specific software. But if I want to learn how to do something, I'll try and force myself if it's comes down to that, because that's the best way to learn something, is trial by fire. If you've heard of that saying, it's just like, we learned ZBrush so fast because we had to. It was like it was sink or swim, right? We had to learn it. So it was good to just put us into the pot, and we just had to learn it fast. So yeah, it just kind of depends on your goals. But you can absolutely block something out in ZBrush if you want to. Okay. I ran into a problem where I used the GOB plugin to utilize the knife tool in Blender. When I sent the model back to ZBrush, I found some edges couldn't be creased with the Z modeler. Have you run into uncreasable edges before, and how do you resolve it if you did? That's interesting, Hero. I haven't run into that problem specifically, but I have ran into uncreasable edges inside of Maya, and it depends on how you're doing your creasing. If you're using the Z modeler brush to do your creases, it's a little more finicky. You'll have better results if you actually mark out your polygroups and then do your creasing by polygroup edge. That gives you, that's pretty much 100% no fail right there. The other thing is you may have, and I've run into this too, you may have two edges in the same spot, if that makes sense. So how you can determine if you do is you can turn on dynamic subdivisions, because dynamic subdivisions will split those two edges apart, and you can, because it will subdivide it, and when it subdivides, it smooths it down, and it will actually kind of pull those edges apart, and you can see if you have two edges in the same location. I did that recently with Blender when I used extrude, and then I canceled it, because when you say extrude and then cancel it, it will still keep the faces there, but it'll keep it right on top of itself. So there'll be extra faces and extra line in there, and I didn't know that it was until I turned on subdivisions. I'm like, oh, it's got some extra stuff in there. So that's another reason why it won't be creasing, if that makes sense. So look into those two things. Maybe that'll help there. Thomas asks, here's a question I had to struggle with. What do you do if you get a reference for a character, but the character details on it make the character look different from picture to picture? Okay, that's a fantastic question. And it's oh, you have to undo twice to get past that. Okay, that's a good tip, yeah. Now that I know that it does that, then I can avoid it, right? But Tomas, basically, and I've had that, and I barely did it because I had several different real live pictures of a person that I had a freelance job for. So I didn't have a concept. I had pictures of a person from all these different angles, and they were pulling different expressions and in different lighting and all that kind of stuff. So the best thing you can do is try and find the feel of that character. What does that character feel like to you? It's called on model in feature animation. It's does this character feel on model? So when I'm looking at, say, I don't know, say if I'm doing Spyro, right? Everybody kind of knows what Spyro looks like, but sometimes a concept artist could draw Spyro in a way where it still looks and feels like Spyro, but his face is stretched, or he's pulling some expression, or he's from a different angle, or he's maybe a completely different medium or something that they painted him with. So it just feels off. And but if you were to put those kind of details into the character, it would make him feel not like Spyro anymore. So I would lean more towards, if you look at all of the concept as a whole, it's like, what can I glean from this concept to make it look and feel like that character? Because a lot of the times when we were working on Infinity, and I don't know if you have a character that already exists and you're trying to make the model of that character, you probably don't have that luxury, but for example, we did. What I mean was, say we were modeling like Donald Duck, and Donald Duck has been, throughout history, he's actually kind of changed here and there. He doesn't always look like the Donald that we know today, and he's kind of made progress as he's gone down the designs. Well, progress is argumentative, but anyway, when our concept artist drew him in the style of Infinity, it kind of broke his feel in a way. So the concept artists were struggling with that in the first place. And then we had to kind of interpret their concept and figure out, well, he doesn't quite look like Donald in this concept. So how can we push him to look more like the Donald that we know and love while still sticking him into the Disney Infinity style? Like, where do we choose? It's kind of like pick and choose your battles, right? Is what we called it. And then it's better to find the feel of the character and drop some of maybe the techniques and the surface details or whatever that's breaking the look of that character, that's making him not look or feel like that character anymore. I would lean more towards what makes it feel and look like that concept. So I know that's kind of a long way of saying it, but you know, that's kind of what I usually do is I go towards like, what does this character feel like? So I hope that helps you out and kind of work with the client too, and just kind of push back and forth and see what they want and how they direct you. If it's like, if you go more towards the feel and you've arrived at a spot that you're happy with and you send it to them and then they go, no, we need some more of this texture detail that's in your mind making it not look like that character anymore, then let them direct that, if that makes sense. You know, kind of let them drive that idea instead of you forcing it on them and them going, no, that doesn't look or feel like the character because it has all these details. And if you say, well, it was in the concept, then it's kind of like you're on the wrong side of the fight, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So it's better to make it look and feel like the character than it does to put the details and stuff in there. Anyway, yeah, that's an interesting. I've never talked about that before, but that's a great question. Okay, Lee says, when I use ZModeler, close holes, I get tries all over the place. How do you make them quads? You can't. So close holes will make triangles no matter what. So typically what I'll do if I close holes is I'll either Z-remesh it, and Z-remesh will Z-remesh over that new closed hole and it will make new quads. But everybody knows what Z-remesher will do, and it will stomp some of your details and that kind of stuff. So if you have a hole that is, it's better to bridge the edges of, then you can make quads out of it that way. And that's typically what I do. And you have to also ask yourself if you care if it's triangles or not. The only time you should care if it's triangles is if you are going to subdivide it. That's the only time triangles really come into you not wanting them, is if you're going to be subdividing your model. So if that's the case, then you'll want to, you know, do the duplicate Z-remesh flow and then reproject the details back onto the new subdivided mesh. But yeah, close holes, that's just the beast that it is. It will make triangles. So that's how I get around it, is Z-remesh it. So I hope that answers your question. Lucky, hey Shane, as I follow up with the Z-remesh guides brush. Okay, yeah, I was asking you about this. No matter how precise I set it for, or how high of res it was, I hit Z-remesh, it would make some sections very good poly count and some really bad. When I masked then grouped the segments, I didn't even use the guides. The results were really good. And I used 1000 adaptive resolution. That's fantastic. I've been fighting, honestly, Lucky. I've been fighting with Z-remesher, trying to get it to give me something even close to what I want for the longest time. Honestly, that is the number one thing that's been holding me back from releasing the new lessons that I've been promising for months now, months. And I apologize for that. But honestly, it's, and it sounds like an excuse, but this is the battle you're finding right now, is what is the best way to get Z-remesher to behave like you want, give you results that you want. And I finally come down to, I'm just going to tell you guys all these methods and then you can experiment with them yourself. But I have also had really good experience with just using, masking it out. And I do edge loop mask border. I don't know that you use that. It sounds like you just hit Control W to assign it to a group. Let me show you what Lucky's talking about really quick. Sorry, I need to pay attention to chat a little bit. I'm just paying attention to the Q&A right now. So I'll catch up with chat here in a minute. Da, 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 da. Yeah, no spoilers. Oh man. Okay. I'm trying to figure out how far back I missed. Okay, thanks for your advice. Yep, keep practicing those hands and feet. Okay. Yep, arcs. The number one advice I can give you is arcs in your hands and feet. Okay. No spoilers. Yes, Guz Sarez. Yep, that's right, Tom. I'm trying to get an interview with him, but I'm not sure how well his English speaking voice is. So but I would love to talk to him about how he does his renders. Oh, geez, Sony with Sonic. I'm not going to get into that, but yes, I agree. Oh my goodness. Okay. If you still haven't, be interested to see a comparison of your old approach to sirloin versus the new one you plan on doing with your current methods. Yes, I will talk about that for sure. Okay. Oh yes, I see. Awesome. You confirm. Okay. Undo twice. Okay. Yes. All separating polygroups. Yep. Try separating polygroups when you're doing the creases. See how good that works. Oh, Steven says, quick fix to that, Shane, is every once in a while hit W and click remove doubles in edit mode. How do you? Oh, remove doubles. Is that a? Okay, hold on a second. Is that under the? I have never used that. Where is that at, Stephen? Interesting. Okay, tell me where that is. I don't think I've ever moved. I don't think I've ever done that. Okay, look up 50 different comic book artists drawing Batman. Yep, 50 different styles. Okay, is there an audio sync feedback delay? You're welcome, Tomas. Okay, only about half a second delay. Yeah, so you guys tell me what your experience is with Zoom versus YouTube, because YouTube is like a 30-second delay where Zoom is like half a second or something. It might not be lined up with my voice or my lips, my audio with my lips exactly. I don't know. So on OBS, when I push to YouTube, I actually have a delay from my audio to my video. So it's actually forcing a delay on my voice to match up with the video that then gets pushed out to YouTube. It's a pain in the butt. But Zoom has no options to do that with, so I apologize. Okay, let's see. It's been difficult for me too, but sectioning things never got used to edge loop mask border. That would be the difference if you use it or not. So I'm going to show you a demo of edge loop mask border, just the difference. Yeah, ZRemesher woes. You had some good luck with instant meshes. Then I was cleaning up some scans. It's free and open source. Oh, there's a instant meshes. Oh, interesting. Okay. Oh, it's just temporary. Okay, good. All right. Oh, with Pinterest. Yeah, when I pull up some heavy boards or heavy websites or whatever. Let me share my screen. And I'm just going to show you. Let's get this. You guys know what edge loop mask border versus just regular. Here, let me just show you. Okay, we have the sphere. Let me subdivide it a couple times and then delete the lower subdivisions. So we have this. And Lucky, I think you were saying you just mask this like this. Here, we'll do like a face mask. And then just hit Control W, and it will put the masked region into its own group. Okay, so now that I have that, I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to go back to the original and hide that one so I can undo it. So now that we have this mask, this is before I hit Control W and put this into its own polygroup. Underneath my menu, there's this thing called Edge Loop Mask Border. And it essentially does the same thing, but it now puts an edge loop around this. And it is kind of chunky. You can see it's kind of chunky. So then what you can do is go polish by features just a little bit. So just crank that up a little bit and it'll polish it out and make it clean. So let's try the exact same Z-remesher settings on both of those and kind of see if we get a different result for some reason. That'll be kind of a fun experiment. These are the experiments that I keep trying and try to get a predictable result out of. But okay, let's do Z-remesher. I'm just going to do the defaults and just I'm going to turn on keep groups and hit it. I think, did you say you cranked up adaptive size? Okay, so, and sometimes it'll put these really weird, like a single face in there that's a different color. And it's like this weird quad. It's broken. So let me undo that, and I'm going to turn up adaptive size and hit Z-remesher again. Let's see what it gives. It was all the way to 100 on both. So it's pretty much the same. Adaptive size, what that does is it essentially tells ZBrush not to care about your count. So see this poly count, this is 5,000. This 5 is set to 5 for 5,000, okay? But if you look up here, since adaptive size was cranked all the way up, it gave me 8,000 because it just gives you as many faces as it needs to get the results that it's looking for. Okay, so if I undo that and I crank the adaptive size down to like, I don't know, 16, it's going to try to keep the count that you want closer. It looks like it ignored it anyway. It still gave me 8,000 and the result looks the same. I don't even know. ZBrush, you're a mystery to me sometimes, especially these numbers. It's like, do these sliders even do anything or are you just trying to make me feel better? Gosh. So I'm going to crank these both. So curve strength, curve strength only has to do with the Z-remesher guides. If I don't have a guide on here, if I'm not using the curves, it's not going to matter where that's at. I'm pretty sure it's going to give me the same result. Yep, 8,000 and same result. Okay, so just so you know, if you're not using curves, this curve strength slider doesn't affect anything. But the adaptive size, it's supposed to, see, it allows the creation of non-square polygons. It also factors the size of the polygons based on the model. So cranking that up it's supposed to allow ZBrush to push it into do its own bidding rather than you forcing it to have, the actual count of polygons you're going for. So it gives it a little more leeway, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's go to this polysphere without the edge on it and try it again with the same settings. I'm just going to turn on keep groups and hit Z-remesher and we'll see what it looks like. So it's fairly close, but it didn't make that weird polygon, but it didn't give us a nice, it's actually overlapping in there if you can see that. You can fix it by smoothing, but see, it just makes this weird, whatever that is, I don't know. It's resolving weird, okay? Oh, you do the double resolution? Okay, we can just hit double right here. And then we're gonna crank adaptive up to 100 and try it and see. Okay, so it essentially gives us the exact same results as the other one. So it's less polygons, so it's 5,500, but we still have that weird face in there. But I think the results are better than if you were to do this with a curve. You can fix those odd polys by remeshing with the same on even, yeah. So, okay, we'll try that now. Same, click on same, hit Z-remesher, and it'll probably fix it. But yeah, so, but it kind of broke that flow, but it did get rid of that white poly. You can always go like hold down Control plus Shift and click right here, and then just hit Control W, and that'll put that poly in the same group as the rest. So that's another way you can do it too, and keep the edge. Let me see. Let me go back here. I'm going to clear this out, and I'm just going to try one more experiment while I have you guys here. I'm going to use this the Z-remesher guide and kind of do a similar path around here and back to here, like this. Then I'm going to crank up. I'm going to crank up this curve strength, adaptive size strength. Keep groups doesn't matter because we don't have any groups, but it's fine. I'll hit ZRemesher and see what it does. So here's the result I get, which is way less polys. So it's 3,000, and it doesn't give me a group because I went across the center. But if I hide this, you can see this is the line that I drew right around here. And then I can hide, basically I can put this in auto groups because they're two different pieces now. Okay, so now I have 3 different groups. Sorry, this is getting way technical and kind of dumb, but now if I hold Control plus Shift and click on a dot that shares the 2 groups like this, it will hide everything but those 2 groups. I can hit Control W, and now we have this is our line now, which doesn't have. It's not as dense as the previous, but the curves can work. It's just they're weird, you know. It's like a battle every time you use curves or groups, or even if you've watched Danny Mac's tutorial where he shows you, what is that called? Polygroup it. You guys seen that Polygroup it, the new one that just came out, where you draw lines, like a dark line where you want the thing to be, and then you send it to Polygroup it, and it comes back with the groups. That's a really weird way to do it too. So I don't know. It's just experimentation. Anyway, I hope that helps. Yep. With ZRemesher guides, the more I add guides, the more it makes it super low poly. You have to crank. I know this is just a sphere with 1 line on it, so it's not really a good experiment case. But excuse me. The more you add guides, the more it makes super low poly where the guides are close together, for sure. Okay, while keeping the rest of the really high poly. Please add the dot clicking in the notes for the lessons, figuring out how to hide and show sections of the model with hitting edges. It was super tough. Oh yeah, okay, let me make a note. Okay, that's a good. Okay, I'll try and add that. Okay. Let's see, what else? Do you guys have any other questions? I ran out of questions on the Q&A section. It's gone. We've got an hour so far. Let me make sure. Anything else in? Okay. I'm just reading through chat again to make sure I didn't miss anything. If I missed your questions or your comments, please type them again. Chat was going by really quick. Oh, Mike, that happens to you every time you use the topology brush too? Yeah, it's just, there's some things about ZBrush that just drives me nuts. Okay, let's see. Do you ever use Sculptris Pro mode? Yes, I do. And let me explain this ZRemesher workflow really quick to you guys that I'm working on, because this is the stuff that I think about when I'm going to sleep at night. I'm just like, oh, I gotta go, and then I'll come down and like jot some notes and stuff. But essentially, I kind of wonder. I'm trying to think if I should illustrate or if I should just explain it to you. But the current pipeline, this is how I have it laid out in the course. Okay, block out your character, combine all of the objects together with Dynamesh. Then kind of stay in Dynamesh mode and do your details and stuff like that and bring it almost all the way to the end. Then duplicate that Dynameshed mesh, okay? Then ZRemesh that, and then do real subdivision levels. So you subdivide it up into about 1 million polys or whatever, and then reproject the detail from the Dynameshed mesh back onto the new mesh. This is what I talk about in the clean and polished lesson. This is exactly kind of the workflow that I talk about. Then what you end up with is a subtool that has multiple levels of resolution, where the top one has all your detail and the bottom one is a low poly mesh, but isn't necessarily your low poly game mesh. Just as a side note here, and I haven't talked about this in the course or at all, I think, but because it's kind of dangerous, but something that you can do that I have not talked about is you can take your high resolution model into, like, say, QuadDraw or Maya's QuadDraw or 3D Coat, do some retopology. Then what you can do is one of two things. You can either bring that back, that retopologized mesh, you can bring that back into ZBrush, subdivide it up to about 1 million polys, and then project the old detail back onto that. So now your low is actually your game mesh and your high is your high. The problem with that, and the reason I don't teach that, is because if you have details such as buttons and just little things that are in your retopologized low that you actually stitched in, you actually went up and around the buttons and you actually have that geometry in there trying to cover those. But in your high resolution mesh, say like your coat is in one subdivision or is in one subtool, your buttons are in another subtool, that makes it multiple subtools, and you can't put your low resolution mesh into multiple subtools. It has to be the low of a high, if that makes sense. And that's why it's not good to bake maps in ZBrush, because of that problem. You can't bake multiple subtools to one low like you can in Marmoset. So that is the huge reason that map baking in ZBrush is bad, because you can only project from your high resolution to your low resolution of that same subtool. You can't bake from multiple highs to one low. Okay, so just to be clear. But the thing I wanted to tell you that's kind of fun is you can actually go to your low resolution of a high resolution mesh. So say you took a head, like say Kate's head, for example. You took her head, you exported it out to 3D Coat, you did the retopology of just the head, so it didn't include the eyelashes and the eyebrows and all that kind of stuff. You just retopologized the head mesh itself with all the nice geometry and deformation and stuff like that. You can do that, and then you can bring that back in as the number one subdivision level of that subtool. And what it will do as an OBJ, you can import it as an OBJ, and just as long as that subtool is at the lowest subdivision level, so level 0 or 1 or whatever it's called, import that OBJ into that subtool level, it actually works. So it will bring that in, and then it will subdivide that mesh up and project all of it back onto that low. The problem with that is, you know what ZBrush does to your mesh when you subdivide? It physically shrinks your model. So now the lowest resolution model of that subdivision list will be changed from the one that you actually exported out of Maya or 3D Coat or whatever. So that's another reason I don't teach that in the course, but I wanted you guys to know that it works and that those are kind of viable pipeline flows that you can use. Okay, I'm just giving you a little more information if you ever want to use that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's the current pipeline that I teach in the course. So block out Dynamesh, duplicate ZRemesh, subdivide, project. Okay, so that's the current thing. The new method that I've talked about in several of my recent videos, but I still haven't put the lesson actually in the course, is the new workflow goes like this. Block out your character, exactly the same, but instead of taking it to Dynamesh, you take it to remesh by union, which essentially just stitches all of that stuff together. So it does the same thing as Dynamesh, but without without rebuilding your mesh at a higher resolution, which is bad. Okay, so now you have this remeshed mesh, this unioned mesh. Then instead of doing details and that kind of work on it, you actually just z-remesh that right there, right then and there. And what that does for you is it gives you a lower resolution mesh that it's much easier to keep clean and and smooth. Dynamesh is difficult to keep clean and smooth, if you guys might have noticed. So the lower you can keep your resolution of your character, the better it is. So you try and keep it very low as long as you can. Also, the other benefits of that are if as soon as you add real subdivision levels to your model, then you lose a whole bunch of functionality that ZBrush has for that mesh. Like you can't use ZModeler on a subdivided mesh. You just can't. You can't use some of the cutting tools. You can't use a lot of the modeling tools if it has subdivision levels. So essentially, I save that for the very, very end now. So it goes block out, remesh by union, z-remesh, and then just try and build your character with that remeshed mesh and go as long as possible. When you asked about Sculptris Pro, well, before I get into that, let's go back to talk about what Lucky was talking about, where sometimes I like to add in some edge flow in the z-remeshed mesh, because sometimes when you're doing the eyes and the nose and things like that, you'll actually run out of geometry when you're trying to get some of the details in. When I say details, I'm just talking about very light details like eyebrow edges, upper eyelids, lower eyelids, nostrils, the crease beside your nostril, those kind of details. I'm not talking about pores and eyelashes and things like that. I'm not talking about super tight details. I'm just talking about details that allow you to figure out the structure of your character, okay? So, and those details work very well with the pinch brush with very low resolution. But sometimes you'll get areas, let me share my screen. Okay, sometimes when you're using the pinch brush on these areas and you're going diagonally across an area like this, it doesn't always give you the best edge flow. See, here, let me change it to a better, yeah, so see how I mean, I can keep pinching this, but it just doesn't give you a nice line, okay? It's because it's still kind of chunky because you're going across polygons that are diagonal and you're trying to pinch them together. But if you can see this edge flow that I made, if you pinch along that edge flow that you just made, it doesn't take much to give you a really nice pinched edge versus kind of a chunky one. It's kind of giving, I mean, this actually doesn't look bad, but when you get to a certain point where you're like, okay, I'm out of geometry, but I don't want to z-remesh because I've spent all of this time adding in these things that, that a z-remesh would undo. If I was to z-remesh this, it would undo these creases that I put in there. So then at that point, you need to ask yourself, is it best to z-remesh anyway? Like say I forgot to put an ear in or something like that, and you're going to want to z-remesh it anyway. At that point, you can go back in and you can take your pinch brush and you can re-pinch those areas, and it's not going to take you that long, okay? So that's kind of the trade-off. So is it better to z-remesh the mesh at that point and then go back and put in the pinch, or is it better to use Sculptris Pro? So there's two things about Sculptris Pro. One is it's going to add triangles all over the place. So eventually you're going to have to z-remesh it anyway, okay? But it works well because you can go in here and you can just start adding some geometry where some didn't exist before. But you need to be careful because you're going to be in dynamic subdivision mode most likely, just like I showed you here. So see, I have dynamic turned on, and when I first start Sculptris Pro, it's going to start with the low mesh. So if I turn off dynamic, it's going to start with this. And that's actually what's, you're going to have to turn dynamic off, because dynamic and Sculptris Pro do not get along well together, because dynamic subdivisions is actually subdividing the mesh. And to subdivide the mesh, triangles don't work well. So that's your trade-off when you start adding Sculptris Pro stuff. So you're going to have to turn off dynamic. So then you can just start working with dynamic subdivisions. So now I can start adding some details and stuff like that. And you can see that your surface is going to look different now. It's going to have triangles. So sometimes what I'll do, let me go back before I turned on Sculptris Pro. Okay, sometimes what I'll do is I will start with something like this. I'll turn off dynamic, but I will add a level of subdivision. So Control D, that's one level, not a bunch. So I don't hit apply. If I hit apply here, that's going to add 3 levels of subdivision, and that's too much. Okay, I just want a nice base that I can then start sculpting with Sculptris Pro on top of. So now what I want to do, since Sculptris Pro doesn't work on a mesh that has a subdivision level, I need to delete the lower, which is what I'll do right now. And now I can go in here and start to use Sculptris Pro. And it's a better experience because it's not subdivided as much. But you will still see the faces like this. You'll still see the quads. You'll still see all that stuff. So if that makes sense. But like I said before, Sculptris Pro is dangerous because all of a sudden it gives you, it's almost like autopilot going off inside of an airplane, and all of a sudden now you have to deal with all the controls yourself, you know, because all of a sudden you can get into all the details, if that makes sense. So Sean was saying one tip on the Sculptris method is apply a dynamic sub-duplicate and decimate, then use Sculptris. You can totally do that too. You can decimate your model, or you can use, under Sculptris Pro, I haven't used it much, but there's this Tessimate, and you can hit Tessimate, and it will do it to the entire object too. Basically, it'll turn your entire object into triangles, and you can crank this level up to get it maybe down. Is it down? Okay, down. So you can crank it down to get, but that will subdivide your entire model. So you have to be careful with that. And where decimate will actually decimate your entire model, but it will make it all triangles. So I typically will do what I just showed you, and I will subdivide it and then start using Sculptris Pro. And then I'll just add triangles where I need it instead of doing it to the entire character, if that makes sense. Okay, yep. All right, so that's current. I wish I could push that information that I just told you guys out to everybody and just say, look, this is how you should do things. Okay, you guys, okay, more questions. Let's see, one, twice. Okay. Is it better to focus on something or be a generalist when it comes to creating 3D models? Tomas, I suggest focusing on what you want to do as an artist. Sorry, one second. Kind of gone are the days of generalists. It's nice to have, to put in your portfolio, hey, I can do more than just characters. But if you have a portfolio full of stylized characters, the companies are going to know what to do with you and what you want to do. If it's full of realistic characters, they're going to go, okay, we can hire you at Naughty Dog because you are making the kind of characters that we make. All a company or a freelance contract place, all they want to know is that you can do the work that they need you to do. So that is what a portfolio is. It's you're telling them before they ask, it's you're telling them that, hey, you can do this work. And that's what they want to know. You know, they just want to know that you can do the job. A lot of people ask me, what should I put in my portfolio? And that is always my answer is put in your portfolio what you want to do for a living, you know, what you want to do in your career and what job you want to have. If you start putting in like buildings and props and that kind of thing, you may get hired just to do props. And if that's what you want to do, fantastic. That's great. Put them in your portfolio. If you want to do buildings and stuff, put them in your portfolio. If you want to do stylized characters, put them in your portfolio. But the more you focus on one thing, the better that thing is going to get. It's kind of like, I'll use my musician reference again and say, there's those people who can play all the instruments, right? And they're good at them, but they've spent time learning them. So if you're a guitar player, you learn how to play guitar, and not necessarily, you can dabble in drums and bass and singing and stuff like that. But if you want to be a really good guitar player, you focus on guitar, if that makes sense. So that's kind of my advice is, people are going to go out there and they're going to look for a guitar player for their band. They're not going to look for, hey, can you play a bass and a drum and guitars too? And maybe they're looking for that. That's most independent developers are looking for people who can do more things. But if you're looking to get a job in a large company like Blizzard or something like that, they want you to focus more on one thing and do it really, really well. So that's what I would advise there. Okay, but let's see. When I have a Dynamesh high-res model, the edge flow is always really bad. Yes. So you can't get clean edges. And when working with ZRemesher and Subdivide, the remesh model, I don't get why I'm using Dynamesh at all. Lise, you just said exactly why I changed the pipeline, because of that reason right there. I hardly ever use Dynamesh in my workflow any longer. The only time I use Dynamesh now is when I am going to print it. When I'm going to print towards the end, because Dynamesh works better merging all of the pieces together in a nice watertight model, where ZRemesher will actually remesh the thing and at a lower resolution mesh. And that's not good for 3D printing. For 3D printing, I still want to keep all of that detail in there. That's why I use Joseph Druss plugin that I talk about in the course when I Dynamesh everything together, because it does a really good job of doing that. And then I can cut it up and key it and do all that kind of stuff. It works. Dynamesh works really well with live Boolean. It works really well when you're at that printing phase where you're prepping it for printing. So that's the only time I really use Dynamesh anymore, is during that phase. So yes, you've found why I kind of switched. Got another question about poly painting. My Badger character has got some patterns on his face, and I'm trying to make some clean lines. How do you approach it? I have a feeling the poly groups is what I should do. You can. That's one method of doing it, is you can use poly groups to do that. But typically what I'll do, if you have patterns on your character, or you have high resolution details like lines, like those lines on Kate that are cut in down the front and the back, I save those until the very, very, very end. So when I say I keep a dynamic subdivided, this stuff is really kind of hard to talk about. It's these big words. Anyway, these a dynamically subdivided ZRemeshed mesh. There you go. Say that 8 times. That I keep it in that state for as long as I possibly can, because it helps me keep the model nice and clean for as long as I can. And I will keep it in that state until I actually need to add either poly painting details or surface cutting details or surface noise or anything that's high resolution details to the surface. That's the only time I'll finally go, okay, I'm ready to move to that phase. Okay, that's why that's why when I do poly painting initially, I will fill everything with large color, like flat color. Just fill the object with the color, and then you can do some poly painting if it's graduated tones. Like I will use the airbrush on a face if I'm adding some red to, say, the cheeks and the ears, and then adding some blue to the chin. You can still get away with that stuff while in a dynamically subdivided ZRemeshed mesh, okay? But I will save like actually tattoos and
really intricate designs to the very end after I actually hit apply on that dynamic subdivisions and actually make it into real subdivisions. And then that will allow me to subdivide it up to 1 million polys or more and get that high resolution detail that I need. So I will save that surface detail till the end. And you guys, I need to put it in there, but I've said this before, but I'm going to take this opportunity to say it again. Don't use 100% black. Don't use 100% white anywhere on your model if you can help it, because the blacks will get rid of all the shadows and all the form detail in your model. Go down to like 80% black with some other color like purple or blue or something like that. And then with the whites, you want to be in like a 10%, 20% area and into like the warmer tones like yellows and oranges and things like that. Don't go 100% white. Don't go 100% black if you can help it, because the game engines will bloom the white clear out. It'll just blow it out. And then they'll just, they'll clip the blacks. So anything from 100% up to 80% will get clipped. And that just means it'll all become 100% black in the engine anyway. And then you're just going to lose your shadows and all that detail in your dark areas anyway. So just stay away from 100% black, 100% white. All right. Let's see. Would you advise at this time, if you want to keep adding detail, to just use the divide and division level instead of using Sculptris Pro? Yes, because Sculptris kind of makes a really high poly count. Yep. So I essentially kind of just answered your question, Lucky, where just save that stuff till the very end. The only time I really use Sculptris Pro is if I run out of Z-Remesher detail. If I want to put in like a face smile like this and I just run out of detail and it gives me like the crappy pinched line right there, then I'll go, okay, I guess I need to turn on Sculptris Pro and just, rather than Z-Remesh and try to rework the lines into that area, I'll just go, okay, uncle, I'll just use Sculptris Pro and do that. So, and then, but I'll wait until it's time to subdivide, because you can also add in those cut lines with subdivide, like if you actually added real subdivision levels. But as soon as you do that, as soon as you say, okay, I've crossed the threshold of using real subdivision levels, now you're losing all of the tools that don't work with subdivision levels, like Sculptris Pro, like ZModeler, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like this gateway or this milestone that you're like, you have to get into your mind that you're like, okay, I'm ready to move on. I'm leaving that stuff behind. I'm ready to paint and I'm ready to add surface details. Okay, so that's kind of the decision you have to make at that point. But at that point, you can always duplicate your subtool that you're going to do that to. So then you can always go back. So hopefully that answers your question. Good idea, bad idea to do edge loop mask border ahead of time before pinching diagonally across low poly mesh to avoid Dynamesh and remesh? Yes, you can. The only thing is the edge loop mask border, if you don't Z-remesh it, it will make triangles. I'm not sure if this is your question or not, but it'll actually make triangles. So you'll want to Z-remesh that with groups turned on. If you're going to go that route, you can do that. Because, like I said, triangles do not work well with dynamic subdivisions. But yeah, I wish I could just go, okay, I want this loop here, I want this loop here. That is how you can kind of add some more detail, but triangles aren't good either because they introduce pulls to the surface. So if you're trying to keep your surface smooth and you do an edge loop mask border and you keep it and you don't Z-remesh it, you'll have pulls. So that's just kind of another thing. Okay. Let's see. When posing a character with open mouth containing teeth and tongue and eyes, would you turn off those subtools and pose only the body, or would you leave them all on and pose it? That's a really great question, Angelo. The answer is what is your end result? If you're just looking to turn that into a print, or you're just going to be illustrating it, just doing a render or something like that, and you don't necessarily need to keep the teeth in there, there's no reason you can't just hide them and leave them alone and turn them off and ignore them. But if you're, yeah, it's good to have them there just to create, like, say, your animation mesh from, you'll want to have them, but it's easy enough just to save off a new subtool that you're going to say, okay, this is going to be this pose, and I don't need my teeth and tongue in this pose, so I'm just going to hide them or delete them. It doesn't matter if you hide them or delete them or get rid of them. It doesn't matter. Just, yeah, you don't have to take them along for the ride if they're never going to be seen. That's kind of one of those cheaty things you can do. So yeah, it's a great question. Okay. Can you recommend any good 3D engine or software that has excellent 2D toon shading, or tutorials on 2D toon shading conversion? I've only done one game that has toon shading, and that was Calling All Cars for Sony. Sorry, I need to get a drink. One sec. And all we did for that was we just took the low poly resolution character, and then we duplicated it, and then we flipped the normals so they're backwards, and then scaled it up just a little bit, and then filled that with a black material. And what that does is that creates an outline around everything, and it makes it look like a toon shader. Let me see if I can find an example. So it's not necessarily a toon shader. It's a thing that you can do to make it look like it's toon shaded inside of a game engine. So okay, let's see, share my screen. Okay, let's see if I can find some of these. So these trees, it's hard to see. Okay, this guy, I modeled this guy and I made him, but see this thick outline? It's really hard to see. I wish they were bigger. I don't know if you guys can see that. Tell me if you can't. There's essentially, we did the detail on his knuckles. We painted that detail, painted the detail on his chin, but the lines around his teeth, around his mouth, and around his head and all that, that's done with, that's just done with the trick that I just told you, flipping the normals and scaling out the thing. But yeah, all the detail, the interior detail is just hand painted to match. That's it. Okay. You can zoom. Okay. Okay. Let's see. So does that answer your question? There's a video on YouTube. Someone is toon shading using Unreal or Unity. They may have toon shaders in there. I just have not played with them personally. That would be nice, because this method was a pain in the butt, honestly. It was because you had to rig two meshes. You had to rig the mesh that with the color, and you had to rig the mesh that was the outline. And sometimes it would draw crazy lines that didn't look good. So let's see. Arc System Works showcase how to create the style they use for Dragon Ball Fighter Z. Oh, nice. Even though it was a labor intensive. I'd like to check that out. That's cool. Unless you're Phil Collins. Nice. Oh, Sculptris Pro is amazing with Polypaint. That's true, because you can turn on Sculptris Pro and you can get a nice hard line right where you need it without subdividing the entire model. Now, I don't know. It's kind of tricky, because with Sculptris Pro, you can get the lines like that, but you can't really pose a Sculptris Pro model. So eventually you'll have to do a duplicate Z-remesh reproject details eventually, because that is what you can pose, because you need to have a low resolution subdivided mesh if you want to pose your character, if that makes sense. You can pose a Sculptris Pro model, but man, I would not wish that on my enemies. You know, it would be it's extremely difficult to do that. Oh, there's a ZBrush guide from Pablo that shows a cell shaded method in ZBrush. I think yeah, there. I just don't know if that method would transfer to a game engine, if that makes sense. So that was the specific question, I think, is how do you get that look in a game engine, right, Lucky? And that's the experience that I've had with it, is I've had to duplicate the mesh, invert, and make it black. So that's, yeah, it's fun. Toon shading is fun. There's also a way to do it in Keyshot with a material in Keyshot, but again, it doesn't transfer to a game engine. So, oh, you never meant it for games? Oh, you already work in 2D games. 3D is just love. So you just want to make it pretty. Yeah, it depends on your goals. If you're just rendering it, then there's plenty of Toon shader materials out there you can just slap on something. Like in Keyshot, I don't know if Marmoset has one. I don't know if Cycles has one. But typically a rendering engine will come with a Toon shader material. And there's even matte caps inside of ZBrush that are Toon shaded materials. You can find online, just do a matte cap ZBrush search and you can find them. They're just not. The problem with Toon shaders is they aren't, it's going to sound funny, but they aren't very tunable, meaning you can't tune the Toon shader. So they are what they give you, but as far as like internal painting, if you want to ignore just the outline look, if that's what you're going for, and you just want to kind of hand paint something that looks Toon, that's just a matter of hand painting the surface textures. Like I can't remember the name of the student that's always doing that inside of the character workshop, that he did that nurse for the Halloween competition. He's been doing a phenomenal job getting those characters to look very toonified. So they just don't have that black outline around them. So it depends on the look you're going for, based on what you kind of want to do. But Arc Systems also uses Softimage, or at least they did for Guilty Gear. Yeah, you can't get Softimage anymore. I would love to one day work on a 3D animation with Toon shading. Yeah, Blender's Toon shading is kind of okay, but not quite there. I haven't checked it out. Have you used Grease Pencil yet? That stuff looks pretty wild, but that's like 2D drawing, right? But on 3D objects, which is kind of interesting to me. I kind of want to learn how to do the 2D animation just for fun in there, to try and learn a little bit of Grease Pencil. Oh, hey, Marcus. Yeah, dude. Marcus, those are looking great. And you're doing all of that with Polypaint, right? Yeah, that's I love that stuff. Love it. The look you're getting from those things, it's just really impressive. So yeah, it's really, really cool. Let's see. And you might want to try mixing your look with an outline Toon shader, just to see if you can get, that there are Toon shaders that will actually look at the nearest color. Like, say if there's a purple along that edge, they'll look at that purple and make the outline like a darker purple in that area rather than just a pitch black line. And then the only problem with Toon shaders is they don't give you that thick to thin that hand-drawn animation will give you, your actual like hand-drawn lines, because it's automated, procedural, it's computer done, it's not done by hand. So I have no idea how you can get thick to thin lines. The way we did it, we kind of faked it inside Calling All Cars, is we would actually move the outside mesh farther away from the character to get a thicker line in those areas. But it would only be, as they turned their head and stuff, you would see it for a second and it would go away. But anyway, yeah, maybe something to experiment with. So. Improve your skills. Yeah, everybody's always improving, right? But yeah, I think the stuff you have going on is really nice right now. Very cool. All right. Any other questions before I wrap this up? I think I might be getting some sort of a cold or something. I hope not. We're going to see Wizard of Oz play tonight. They have a really cool theater just down the street. It's a 360-degree theater where they do the play down in the middle, and the theater is really, really tall, and it goes deep into the ground, so they can raise the sets up into the ceiling and they can drop them down into the ground. It's really, really cool. So I'm excited to check that out tonight. Anyway, go see Wreck-It Ralph if you haven't yet. Go see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I haven't seen that yet, but the rendering they do in that film is just incredible. I'm still trying to decide if I like that animation style or not. It's kind of a jerky animation style. It sort of reminds me of the Dragon Prince, but they do it a little differently than Dragon Prince. Dragon Prince looks like they are just dropping frames, and Into the Spider-Verse looks like they're dropping specific frames on purpose, so it has more of an intent to it rather than just again a procedural drop in frames. So anyway, yeah, it's great stuff. And you guys, just to remind you, Sean runs a Discord. Super great information happening over there. Those guys are great. Sean, can you drop a link into the chat really quick? Yeah, just I think they're trying to save rendering time or money somehow, and they're writing it off as a style. I don't know, but I really love the style. That's why I talked about it before. But I don't know that I'm a fan of that animation style. So. Yeah, okay, so there's the Discord channel. If you guys haven't joined that yet, it's an unofficial Discord channel, but I'm completely behind it. So I pop in there once in a while. I just typically don't have time to pop in there as much as I'd like to. Oh, excuse me. So if you want to get a little more lucky, I was just saying, if you want some more to talk about 3D more often, you can hop in there. It's the only Discord. Yeah, it's the only Discord channel, so it's official. Awesome. All right, guys, I think I'm gonna wrap this up. But thanks for hanging out with me today, and keep those questions coming. I really like doing this. We'll keep doing this every Friday. And thanks for filling out that poll. If you haven't filled it out yet, just go check your email. I put the poll in the email. And I'm still trying to decide when I'm going to start the student-only stream. If it's going to be before or after Christmas, I'm not quite sure. It depends on my time and schedule and all that kind of stuff. So we'll get that figured out. Oh, let me show you guys one more thing. So I'm having Aaron Bernhardt. Aaron Bernhardt is he is the lead character guy on the Blizzard merchandise. So he's over the team that made those big Overwatch characters, those big Overwatch collectibles, if you haven't seen those. Anyway, you guys saw the freelance job that I was doing for Kajabi. I showed you those heads, right? The little bust of the two owners of Kajabi. Kajabi is the host of my course. And they decided that they wanted to freelance me to do a couple of busts of their CEO and vice president and give it to them for Christmas. There's going to be a big reveal on next Friday during their Christmas party. They're gonna give them these two little busts. I'm really excited about it. It's kind of fun. But I'm having Aaron do the printing and the cleanup because Kajabi is down in Irvine in California, just down the street from Blizzard. So I'm like, hey, Aaron, I know you have a 3D printer, a Form 2 at home, and I know he does good work. I mean, he's Overwatch guy, right? So anyway, he just sent me what it looked like coming off the printer today. So let me share my screen and I'll show you that. Here you go. So yeah, this is what it looked like coming off the printer. This is the Kajabi logo right here. It has a lot of liquid resin still on there. That's why it looks soft and shiny. But after it gets primed and cooked, you basically cook it in the UV oven, and wash it with the alcohol. All of this stuff will come off, and then all those details will crispen right up. So this is what it actually looks like in the Formlabs software when you put all of the supports on it. I think Formlabs does some of the best work when it comes to automating supports. And Aaron actually hollowed it out for me too. He made it so it used a lot less resin. Anyway, fantastic work. I thought I'd show you guys. So it's super cool stuff. So anyway, guys, thanks so much for hanging out again with me today. And I'll let you know how these come out. Hopefully I can show you, and I'll show you some pictures next week. I'm hoping to get a reveal video to see what those guys actually, their reactions are to handing them those 3D prints. So that'll be kind of fun. Anyway, have a great week, and I will see you next Wednesday. No, maybe not next Wednesday. I'll keep you notified when I'm going to start that student-only stream. But if anything, I'm going to see you next Friday for another Q&A session just like this. So yeah, this one's on. Anyway. All right. Marcus, you raised your hand? Nice. Oh, that's kind of cool. So I'm actually glad you did that, because you raised your hand, so I can say allow you to talk. So if you wanted to talk using your microphone, I think I can make you able to do that. That's kind of a cool thing. I'm still learning this webinar software stuff. So, all right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Have a good week, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Cheers. And if you have any questions in the meantime, you can always send me an email. All right. Take care. See you guys. Thanks. I'll enjoy the play. Yep, you guys are welcome. It's always fun. Love it. Oh, drink some. Yeah, get some vitamin C, right? Totally. All right. Take care. See you guys.